In this last video of the series, I want to show you how we can save our data frames to HDFS. This is very similar to reading data from HDFS, so this will be pretty easy. Now, as an example, we are going to load the Titanic dataset into Spark, select the name and fare column, calculate the log of the fare column, and then save that data frame into HDFS as a Parqv file. As usual, I'm going to log in as the Hadoop user, start my Hadoop cluster, and then go into PySpark. So we're going to say su Hadoop. Then I'm going to just start DFS. Now it's loading. And now I'm going to start yarn. Oops, only one dot. And now I'm starting PySpark. Again, I'm connecting to the yarn resource manager. I'm going to use the dev queue, and the name of my application should be saving data. All right, so PySpark is going to load. All right, here we are. So we are greeted by the PySpark shell. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to read in the CSV file. So we say Titanic is equal to spark.read.format CSV. And the first option we want to use is header is true. Second option we're going to use is separator is a comma. Third option, we're going to infer the schema. So infer schema is true. And then we're just going to load that CSV file from HDFS. Titanic.csv. All right. And next we're going to select the name and the fare column. So we say Titanic is Titanic select name and fare. Now we are creating a column called fare_log, which is just a log of the fare column. But remember that we need to import the functions class for that. So we're going to say import pyspark.sql.functions_sf. And then we're going to add that. So we say Titanic is Titanic with column fare_log. And that is basically just the log of the column fare. Right, so that worked. Now, before we save the data, let's have a quick look that everything worked as expected. So Titanic and show. Let's just take the first three rows. Yep, that worked as expected. So we have a name, fare, and the log of the fare. Fantastic. Now, writing a data frame as a Parqv file is actually pretty easy. If you've worked with Parqv files in the past, you know that this is a binary column-oriented format. So we say Titanic.write. So we want to write data. We got to select the mode, and we're going to use the overwrite mode. And there are basically two modes: overwrite, which will create a new file, and append, which will append data to an existing file. And then we just say, well, .parquet. And then we give the path. So HDFS : ///. So we put it into the root directory. Yeah, we're not going to use a folder for that. So Titanic.parquet. All right, hit enter. And the data frame has now been written to HDFS. Now let's have a look at that by opening the Hdfs Ui. So bring up Firefox, type in localhost :9870. Then click Utilities and browse the file system. All right, and there is Titanic.parquet. Now, the first thing you may notice is that the data is actually, if you click on it, is actually a folder. Now, remember that Spark is a distributed system. And inside Spark, your data will be partitioned. And every partition will be written as a single file. However, as you can see over there, our data was partitioned basically into just a single partition. So we only have part 0. Now, if you would have multiple nodes, there would be more parts, because then Spark would partition it to different partitions. So it could happen that you don't have just one file over there. There could be like 100 files over there. However, that being a folder is absolutely no problem, and Spark will actually happily accept this folder and read it in. So let's try reading in that Parqv file in Spark. So we go back to our into our shell, and we just say Titanic_new is equal to spark.read.parquet, and then we say hdfs Titanic.parquet. So remember, this is actually the folder, right, with where the single partitions are in. Now if we hit enter and say, okay, give me the first three rows, sorry, it will work. So that's absolutely no problem. Now, if you are in a situation where you have data and it is partitioned into multiple partitions, but you need a single file, what you could do is you could repartition your data. So you could say something like this. You could say Titanic, then repartition, and say 1, and then just say write mode override, then Parquet hdfs Titanic.parquet. Hit enter, and it is saved to HDFS again. And here what we do is we force Spark to repartition the data frame Titanic into a single partition. Of course, this would basically eliminate distributed computing, but if you really want a single file, you need to collect all the data into one single place. Now, if you check that again, so let's refresh, or let's just go to browse the file system, and you click on Titanic.parquet. Again, it is just a single file, but we explicitly said, hey, let's just partition it to a single partition, and what it will do is it just create a single file over there, but it is still a folder. So that concludes the video series, and I hope you've learned a lot. You should now be in a position to explore the system on your own by consuming the documentation and read some books on Hadoop and Spark.